Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Tom Dienhart joins us offline here today, but with a little bit of a football preview, spring football preview, and looking ahead to the Boilermakers' first spring practice, which will be on Monday, open to the public 4 to 6. Now, this year a little bit different, a lot different actually for spring ball. From a public standpoint, will be open and to media as well, at least for the practice portion. It will just be the first week of practice, and then practice will be closed, so we'll have, availability after that as well. So stay tuned with that. But Tom, it's been seems like a long time waiting, a lot of previews and things to get ready for this. A lot of storylines, I think, and obviously starting maybe with Bob Diaco and that defense and trying to install that. But tell me what some of the things you're going to be paying most attention to as you start covering spring practice.
Yeah, that's a big one, obviously, Alan. The defense overall, some big staff shakeups, as you talked about. The new coordinator, Bob Diaco, coming from Louisiana Tech. Alan, what scheme is he going to run? Is it going to be mostly a 3-4 alignment, which he has favored in his career, or will he also play a lot of 4-3? I think we'll probably see a mix of it. But no doubt about it, he's going to spend a lot of this spring, sorting through his personnel, seeing what the strengths are, the weaknesses are, and how that best fits the various schemes. So that's going to be big. Of course, his new defensive line coach and Terrence Jamison coming from Air Force. And then offensively, I think the line, my mind, is front and center. They have to get better up front. A lot of moving parts. Really, the only sure thing in my mind is the left tackle, fifth-year senior Grant Hermans. After that, things are pretty wide open. So there's no shortage of things to keep your eye on this spring for Purdue.
You look at the start of that, and Bob Diaco you're talking about, and I know we talked about and written about Hadia's scheme here with the George Karlaftis kind of as your point person on the defensive line. Diaco's been known for that three-man front. How do you see that shaking out, or is that something that you see a sense, and we really don't know yet because we haven't talked to Bob, but the opportunity to how he's going to frame his defense? Will he look at personnel and what he has and try to work it that way, or what's your gut feeling on that?
Yeah, I think you can't force the old round peg into a square hole. You can't ask people to do stuff maybe they really weren't recruited to do, or just physically aren't cut out to do. So again, I think he's going to spend a lot of this spring trying to figure out how his personnel fits these various schemes. I still think in the end we probably will see a lot of 3-4. A big key there, Alan, is going to be the nose tackle, and that's probably would be Lorenzo Neal. That's going to be one guy everybody's eager to see. Of course, we didn't see him at all last year. Neal was recovering from off-season knee surgery. You have to go way back. Neal got hurt against Indiana at the end of the 2018 season. Again, didn't get on the field at all last year, but we certainly could have used him. And how much will we see him this spring? That's going to be another storyline to watch. Will Purdue put him out there to maybe to risk any re-injury of the knee? Who knows? But again, Neal, if Purdue's defense is going to be as good as they hope, is going to have to be healthy and a big part of whatever scheme Bob Diaco ends up playing a lot.
Jack Plummer, and of course a little bit uncertain also on exactly what quarterbacks we're going to see. And obviously Aiden O'Connell will be out there. The former walk-on now will be a junior next year and played very, very well in a relief role. But early line on that in terms of, again, yes, Plummer's health is a question, but also how you see this lining up here early on in spring ball for quarterback.
Yeah, Plummer's sort of in that same boat as Lorenzo Neal, coming off an injury for Plummer. It's his ankle. He hurt that against Nebraska last year. Of course, O'Connell started the final 3 games. And I have a feeling you may not see a whole lot of Jack Plummer, again, just for fear of maybe him getting hurt again. You want to get this guy to August to training camp healthy. That would mean, obviously, a lot of reps for Aiden O'Connell, who will be a junior this year, and I think really impressed last year under those circumstances. Began the year as the 4th-string quarterback, ended up starting and performing pretty well. So he's going to see plenty of action, you think. The redshirt freshman, Paul Paferi, will also see some action. So there's going to be a lot of reps available for these quarterbacks. And, again, it will be fascinating to see if O'Connell gets out there and sees a lot of reps or not for spring football.
The 24 picture that we had, just talking about expectations, and at least some from I think SI.com had picked Purdue 24th in the early ranking. We're looking at a photo of David Bell and Rondale Moore and George Karlaftis. But this is this interesting season because obviously it is year 4 of the Jeff Brom era. There's been a lot of success in the first couple of years, and last year, due to really an onslaught of injuries that we've not seen, at least I haven't seen in my years of watching Purdue football, made it very difficult for the Boilermakers to get past 4 wins. But expectations, there is no shortage, at least from the skill position or the receiver position in terms of talent on this team. But I'll start with Rondale Moore. We don't know exactly how much we'll see of him this spring. But you've got the receivers room is really a loaded room in terms of talent, and really going to be an interesting thing to see how Purdue manages that throughout the course, not only of the spring but next season.
That's what the coaches love. There's no other position on that roster that has as much talent as the wide receiver room. And yeah, Rondale Moore's right there with Jack Plummer and Lorenzo Neal, a guy coming off injury. And, they know what Rondale Moore can do. Probably no real big reason to have him out there a whole heck of a lot this spring. Get him healthy, keep him healthy. We all know that playmaking ability. He really is a guy who can score every time he touches the ball. And he talked about David Bell, the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Some interesting guys coming out of redshirts. T.J. Sheffield is a guy built a lot like Rondale Moore, smaller slot receiver who really looked good early on before he got hurt and ended up redshirting. Mershawn Rice is another redshirt freshman, a bigger wide receiver. Of course, Allen, they've got a few of these guys on campus already from the class of 2020. A couple wide receivers, Malik Carr, the big 6'5" prospect from Detroit, is a guy a lot of people are excited about. He came early for a reason. He wants to play. And the other kid from Michigan, Yassine, a bigger wide receiver who we're talking to his coach, Allen. This guy's work ethic is off the charts, and he can maybe end up impacting too. So you can go on and on. You're talking about the talent at wide receiver. It's going to be fun if you were Jamarcus Shepard to try to, coach these guys up and have all these weapons at your disposal. And the quarterback's got to like it too, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And Jamarcus Shepard doesn't need anything more to be enthusiastic about. He's probably one of the all-time great coaches in terms of not only coaching up his guys, but a guy that brings that enthusiasm with him at a high level. Talk about that tight end position. Obviously, Bryson Hopkins will be going on to the NFL, and that's a whole nother story. But in terms of a guy that may be able to make an impact in that league, but tight end is a position that Malik Carr potentially could work his way into. But Purdue's got some other guys that they really like at that position. Well, I think this is what spring ball will be fun to watch to see how those guys develop.
Yeah, Payne Durham's the most veteran option at that position coming back. He was a redshirt freshman last year. Allen, he only made 9 catches, but 4 of them went for touchdowns. So awfully efficient, awfully productive with his touches. And he's a big guy, too, 6'5", 260 pounds, pretty good at the point of attack. And then behind Payne Durham are the redshirt freshmen. Garrett Miller from the state of Texas is a guy, good athlete, can maybe be the closest thing, the same type of an athlete Bryson Hopkins was, working the seam, working downfield, looking for mismatches. And Kyle Bilodeau from Virginia is the other redshirt freshman tight end, came in, I think, as a 4-star recruit, a smart kid who picked up the playbook well. So, again, Ryan Wallace, the tight ends coach, has 3 interesting, pieces of talent to work with there at tight end, and it will be interesting to see how he deploys those guys moving forward in 2020.
Running backs, something we haven't really talked a lot about, just because you've got obviously, you have 3 guys that had got some experience, 2 guys that got a lot of experience, obviously, but tell us about what you might expect to see in the spring, and what you try to develop if you're Jeff Brom in that true running game.
Yeah, King Daru, of course, got a baptism by fire last year as a true freshman. Ended up being the number one running back with injuries to those veterans like Tario Fuller and Richie Worship. So, Daru is a blue-collar back, tough guy with decent speed, who has some nice hands as well. I think the staff likes his future. His classmate, Dejon Hewitt, redshirted. He's a little quicker. When to finally take the wraps off Hewitt, we'll see what he's all about. He's an interesting prospect from the Nashville, Tennessee area. And then, of course, Xander Horvath, from Mishawaka, Indiana, the former walk-on. He looked good the last time we saw him against Indiana in the finale. Was running a lot like Mike Allstott out there. Some big runs, a big game for Horvath. He's a guy I know they're excited about. And then coming in this summer, Tyreek Murphy from Christ the King High School in Queens, New York. Pretty big-time recruit, Alan. I mean, you've been around a long time, and I think Murphy's probably one of the more touted running backs Purdue signed in the last 15 to 20 years, and he's coming with his goal in mind of maybe starting this year, playing a heck of a lot. So Chris Barclay, running backs coach, has some very interesting players to work with, and again, I'm really eager to see this Murphy kid from New York.
It's funny because we really have to wait to see what the defense does and that may be a thing that we're really going to start to see how that takes shape. May not come until the spring game and even into the fall camp. I did want to ask you one last question. We got just a couple minutes left in the show, though, Tom, and that is one of the things is on the site that our readers seem to be enjoying, and you're doing a great job of pulling up some names from the past. You had a good story today on Melvin McCants, who played for Gene Cady and company, 1986 to 1989, and next week we'll probably feature Steve Bryant that you talked in. But talk about Mel. That was just an interesting your conversation with him, and obviously a very, very good player for some very good teams. Two Big Ten championship teams under Gene Cady. But what was it like to catch up with Big Mel?
Yeah, good guy. Alan, I was a student when he was playing. I'm a couple years older than Melvin, but I remember talking to him for a basketball game program feature story way back when, and always a real affable guy, very friendly guy, and he still has that infectious personality. Just talking to him on the phone. He's been over in Belgium since the early 90s. He had a lengthy career playing basketball in Belgium and has settled in there. Hasn't been back to the United States since 2012, but has a 9-year-old daughter and has a significant other. And he's happy and well, has a nice job over there. And again, it's just fun catching up with those guys. That was a fun time for Purdue basketball fans during the mid-'80s. He talked about the back-to-back Big Ten titles, 1987, 1988, and Melvin shared a lot of his memories from Purdue, and again, kind of got us caught up on what he's doing today. And Melvin really appreciated his time at Purdue. Had a lot of good things to say about Coach Cady and the university overall. And it's a lot of fun just revisiting these guys and seeing how their lives have gone. You talked about Steve Bryant. We'll have that post next week. That talked to Rick Trefsker, quarterback from the Jim Coletto era, this last week as well, and Rick's doing very well down in South Florida. So always fun, like I said, to visit with these old Boilermaker heroes of the past and have them share their memories with us too.
Left-handed quarterback, the most previous quarterback to wear number 13 and start, prior to Jack Plummer, obviously, and that's Rick Trefsker. But yeah, great stories there. And it's funny about that group, and that Troy, Todd, and Everett and Mel McCants couldn't be better guys. They were very good, very competitive guys, no doubt. But they were great guys. Mel McCants, if you got into Mel McCants a little bit, he'd come right back after you, and he did a lot of that in his days in West Lafayette. Tom, thanks so much. We look forward to seeing you in West Lafayette, and when we're back and ready to start spring ball on Monday. And thanks again for joining us on the show. So we're going to say thank you also to our sponsors, XXX, on the hill but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, thank you for sponsoring us in our 10th year. And of course, Gordon Jackson and Scott Sumner. I don't know. I think that we've got Kurt Larman and maybe Steve Clark back there helping us out as well. And Wes Jackson, also our son of Gordon, is always a helper back there. We appreciate that too. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. We'll have Gene Cady as a guest, and also Paul Sadler and Charles Jiske, two of the kind of behind-the-scenes guys that have a lot to do with the images you see of Purdue. Of course, Charles is a great photographer. Paul, great photographer in his own right, but also a guy that puts together a lot of what you see from an image standpoint for Purdue athletics. So we'll look forward to that next week. And that will be the 50th anniversary of Rick Mound's 61-point game. Look for that story on the site next week, as well as we'll have a story about how that all came to pass. Hard to believe that's been 50 years. So thank you all for joining us. If you've missed part of the show, we'll have the replay up. Gordon does a great job of getting that up for us on the site. And I really enjoyed having Mike Steele and Bruce Parkinson on as well. Really good interview on the front end. At least they had good comments. I don't know if the interview was all that good, but their talk was. So have a great week, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing what happens on the basketball courts. Purdue against Michigan tomorrow. Then, of course, Indiana on next Thursday. A lot to talk about, certainly on goldenblack.com now and in the future. And we'll look forward to having you read that as well. So have a great week, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.